more participants in throughout the seminar, but for now, we're just going to get started. For those of you who don't know, we are Advocate for Lives, a youth-led organization that raises awareness for blood and organ donation and health-related research. Before we begin, we just want to go over a few housekeeping rules, specifically for the chat. We would appreciate if you don't spam the chat or use any inappropriate or swearing language. Also, keeping any messages relevant to the chat. As well, please make sure to keep yourself muted unless you're asked by the speaker to speak. And you just probably got a notification that says this session will be recorded. We do that so that we can post it on our YouTube channel afterwards for anyone who would like to see our seminars but missed the chance to drop by. And finally, for anyone who would like volunteer hours for this session, you'll be getting 1 or 1.5, depending on how long the seminar is. We would just like if you could change the name on your icon, I guess, on your Zoom right now to the name you'd like on your certificate. We'll explain more about how you can get volunteer hours at the end of the presentation, but for now, just please change your name to the one that you'd like on the certificate.
Okay, so now that we've got that out of the way, today, as you guys know, we're going to be talking to Ola, who's a McMaster Bachelor of Health Sciences student in her first year right now. So we'll be addressing all of the questions that you guys asked through the Google Forms already, as well as the chat at the end of the presentation. So without further ado, Ola, please take it away.
Thank you, guys. I'm actually in my second year, but it's okay. There's like no difference because my second year was all online, so that's pretty much fake. But I'm going to be talking to you guys today a little bit about university and also a little bit about research because I've recently gotten involved in a clinical research team. So I just wanted to share my experience with that a little bit. But, oh, my screen's not working. There we go. So I just wanted to start off the presentation with a super quick disclaimer because I'm only in my second year. So I'm just speaking from my own experience with university so far and just wanted to share with you guys what I've learned over the past 2 years and as I was applying to schools. So just going to go over pretty much everything I wish I knew before I started my first year. But I'm by no means an expert. Okay, so for this presentation, I've got like 4 mini sections that I want to talk about. So the first one is I'll be introducing myself and kind of like what my program is and what my school is like and what research I've done. Then I'm going to go into university, just some like tips and tricks that I wish I knew in my first year. And then I'm going to do a super brief intro over different types of research you can get involved in. And I'm going to end off the presentation with the ways that you can get involved. So starting off with about me. So I grew up in Hamilton. I went to high school at Ancaster High and I was in the IB program. And before all of you guys joined the call, I asked the lovely ladies who are holding this session if you guys have an IB program at the school that this club is from. And apparently you guys, you do. And a lot of you are in IB, which is great because IB really prepares you for university. I know they tell you this all the time, but it actually does because the workload for IB is very similar to your workload in university. And the type of work is similar too, because I feel like a lot of the IB assignments are self-directed and most university work is self-directed. Like it's really up to you what you want to do. So it really prepares you because I know when I started my first year, like everyone talks about how the hardest part is adjusting. And I found the adjustment to be pretty easy because my IB workload was similar, if not even slightly heavier than my workload in my first year of my undergrad. Also, I was going to school in the same city that I grew up in, so it wasn't that new to me and like, you know, I didn't go through that many changes. Obviously, it's going to be different from situation to situation. Like if you're moving to a different city, that's obviously also an adjustment. And then for university, I am in the Bachelor of Health Science program at McMaster. So I'm in my second year and I'm in the wild type stream. So in Healthsci, you can specialize in child's health, which is just like a specialization where you learn more about children in healthcare, or you can stay in the general stream, which is what I decided to do. So on the screen now, I've got some pretty pictures of Mac because I am a marauder through and through. I just wanted to flex my school a little bit. But I also wanted to talk about Mac as a university in general. So Mac's pretty small. I know there's some universities where you have to take buses between classes, but Mac, like this picture in the top left over there, that's the entire campus and you can walk pretty much anywhere within 10 minutes. And when we're in person, our classes usually have 10 minutes between them. So if you have like 2 classes back to back, they give you a 10-minute break that lets you, you know, get to the other building that the other class is in, which is great. And you can easily like get from one side of campus to the other in 10 minutes, which I love because I couldn't imagine having to take a school bus or some sort of like shuttle bus between classes. I feel like that would be really annoying. Like I already don't want to walk like 5 minutes to my classes. I feel like taking a bus would make it even harder to convince me to go to class. So small universities, I think, is a big plus. I also really like small programs. I'm going to talk about that a little bit later. Now for the health science program, and in general, when it comes to looking at programs, I think my number one piece of advice is to look at the courses that you have to take, so the required classes. So I have on the screen on the left over here, the list of required courses in first year of Healthsci. And I just wanted to point out a few things. So each department, so you can see in the course code, it says like Healthsci or Chem. So each department in the university or each faculty usually does their courses a little differently. And then within a faculty, the courses are going to be pretty similar. So most of these courses are run by the Healthsci faculty, but then you take Chem first year, you take 2 semesters of it, and this is run by the Chem department. And pretty much like every first year takes Chem, anyone in any like science related program. So there's going to be like over 2,000 to 3,000 students taking each Chem course each semester, which is insane. But these Chem classes are very traditional. So you have a lecture, you have a tutorial, you have a lab. Oh, sorry, actually they got rid of Chem tutorials. So there's only lectures and there's labs, and you do 2 midterms and a final exam. Healthsci courses are a little different. So Healthsci is based off of a problem-based learning curriculum, which is the idea that it's up to the student pretty much to guide your own learning. So a lot of what we do is called inquiry, which is there's actually a whole course for it in first year. And the inquiry course in first year is a lot about soft skill development. So you're going to work on things like communication skills, giving feedback, reflection skills, and like self-assessment skills, things like that. And these are the soft skills that you learn through experience. You learn like through work, either like when you start working after undergrad or just like working while you're in school. They're like little things that you'll pick up as you go on. But in Healthsci, they give us a specific course for them, so you can really start working on those skills from the beginning. So inquiry classes are like 18 to 20 students. You meet 3 hours every single week, usually in the evenings. My classes were 5:30 to 8:30 every Wednesday. And you get really, really close with your classmates and you get to know each other really well. So small classes are great because that's how you make a lot of friends within your program and within your courses. So it's really, really nice to have that small class feel. It almost feels like you're in high school again and like getting to know everyone in your class, which is great. And then some of these other courses like cell bio may sound pretty like straightforward, but cell bio is also a Healthsci course. And cell bio at Healthsci is a little different because we do assessments that are not like a normal midterm. So there's 2 different types of assessments in cell bio, and it's a whole year course. So you take it first semester and second semester. So in cell bio, you do an OCAT and a NOCAT. And you know it's a Healthsci course when they give it like a super weird name for the assessment. That's pretty much like a normal characteristic for our courses. But an OCAT is a crossword puzzle. And like the questions are riddles and the answer is one word from your course. So you like study all your content, you go over everything, and then you read this riddle and you have to think like, how does it relate to the course content that we learned, and figure out what word fits in that spot in the crossword puzzle, which is really fun, but also really hard. And then there's NOCATs. NOCATs are really similar to the 3rd question on the sub-app. So this sub-app every single year, they give you a question where it's like a made-up scenario, and they want you to come up with a hypothesis or a reason to explain that scenario. And the NOCAT is exactly that, but related to cell bio. So they'll give you some like weird drug and then some results for this drug, and you have to figure out like what the mechanism of that drug is and what it could be doing in the body. NOCATs are a great research experience. That's why I wanted to bring them up, because I know like research experience, you think like, oh, I have to work with a doctor or I have to work with a prof. But with the NOCATs, you're practicing your research skills. You're practicing looking up journal articles and reading through them and understanding what the results of the journal article tells you. And that's like a key research skill that you need before you actually start writing any papers. So within the Healthsci program, a lot of our courses are geared towards helping develop little research skills like the NOCAT does. Another course that's great for research is this one, Interdisciplinary Problem Solving in Health. We just call it 1GO2 because that's way too long of a name to say every time. But basically in 1GO2, you come up with research questions. That's literally like the entire course for the entire semester. You work in a group of like 3 or 4 students, and you're given a topic, and you have to come up with research questions that fit under a specific pillar for each of those topics. So that's a great course for inquiry skills and coming up with good, solid research questions, which is another important research skill. There's a few other courses on here. And the last thing I wanted to highlight is the fact that you get 9 units of electives. So 9 units means 3 courses, essentially, because each course is 3 units. Or you can take one like full year course. Full year courses are 6 units. So that's why they go by units instead of the numbers of courses. But Healthsci is great because the elective space means that you can take any other interest that you want. Like if you're interested in business, you can take some business courses. If you're interested in poli-sci, you can take some poli-sci courses and do a minor in those areas as well. So I'm going to talk about electives later, actually, so I'm just going to move on. So for research, okay. So I work on a clinical research team. I started in September, and I'm going to talk about what clinical research is if you don't know it, but it's called the For Women's and Infants Health Team, and it's run by a doctor who's an MFM. So that's the maternal fetal medicine specialist. So these are doctors that are essentially high-risk obstetricians. And if you don't know what an obstetrician is, those are the doctors that work in labor and delivery. So they deliver babies. And then MFMs specialize in pregnancies that are a little bit more complicated. So maybe the mother is at risk for giving birth too early, or maybe she has some underlying health conditions that, make the pregnancy a bit more difficult to deal with and a bit more complicated. So a lot of the work on the team is targeted towards that field of medicine. And we do a lot of research in things like preterm birth. I also have 2 other things on the screen. I have Mac Healthsci, because like I said, a lot of our courses really help you develop some research skills. And I think that's really, really important and a great way to get research practice without having to, go out of your way to find experiences outside of school. So that's why I have that on there. And then I have this case competition. So there's a lot of different opportunities to practice your research skills, and getting involved in a case competition is just one of them. So I did this one this year with my friends, and because I don't want to talk about the clinical research team too much, because I'm not sure, a lot of it's confidential, so I'm not sure what I can and can't share. I'm gonna talk very superficially about that, but for Ignite, I wanted to go into a bit more detail about our project, just to teach you guys something cool and show you what you can learn when you go out of your way to take a new opportunity to practice your skills outside of just your courses. Okay, so for Ignite, me and my group did a topic called Optogenetics. So one of my friends suggested this because they mentioned it in one of her classes. And we started doing our own research. So the Ignite case competition, basically you have to write an abstract, and then the top 40 teams get their abstracts published in a book, and then they get to do a poster presentation, and then the top 5 teams take their poster presentation and present it again, basically. So that's how Ignite works. So like I said, we did optogenetics, and basically to tell you what optogenetics is, it's really, really cool. So it's a technique in neuroscience where basically you take a gene for a protein that is sensitive to light, and then you insert that gene into a neuron cell, and that neuron will make that protein and express it on its cell membrane. So in this image on the right over here, this is a neuron, and you can see a light being shown onto the neuron. So basically what happens is the protein is an ion channel, and when light is shown on it, it'll let ions into the cell. Now, if you know how neurons work, which I'm assuming most of you do, it's through action potentials, right? So it's the depolarization of the cell membrane potential that causes an action potential. And that happens through the ions leaving the cell and going into the cell. So these optogenetic proteins allow us to control the depolarization of the neuron so that we can either activate it or inhibit it. So we can either put in a protein channel that's going to depolarize the cell when the light shines on it, or we can put in a protein channel that will hyperpolarize the cell when the light shines on it. And if it hyperpolarizes it, it's going to make it more difficult for an action potential to occur. So that essentially inhibits the neuron from acting. Now, this is a really, really cool branch of neuroscience because you can do so much with it. Because as you can imagine, the brain controls so much of our body that if you're able to manipulate the neurons, you can, address and treat so many different diseases. So some of them that I have on here are Parkinson's. So in Parkinson's disease, there's an area of the brain called the substantia nigra, and that's in your basal ganglia. And basically, there's neurons that aren't really working that well in that part of the brain. So theoretically, with optogenetics, they can put, they can control the neurons in that part of the brain to get them to work again. And that could reduce the symptoms of Parkinson's. With vision, we actually have optogenetic proteins naturally in our bodies, in our retinas. So this optogenetic system can be introduced in people who maybe like their vision isn't working really well, or maybe their own optogenetic proteins aren't working that well. So they can artificially give it to them to help, restore their vision, which is also sick. And then chronic pain. So we know that pain is a neural signal. So basically, if we can put in an optogenetic protein that will inhibit the neural signal from getting to our brain, you can reduce the pain signal. So you won't experience as much pain. And that's a great way to treat chronic pain. So a lot of this is already being studied in mice models. So that's the picture that I have down there. You can see a cute little mouse with an optic fiber in its head, because that's how they're getting the light to the optogenetic proteins. And now they're doing more and more research on ways that we can use this practically in humans. So our abstract was looking at some of the limitations of optogenetics in humans and how we can solve those limitations in order to actually start using them in humans, because it's such an amazing technology that could probably solve so many different diseases. So I just want to show you, you guys don't really have to read this entire abstract because it's a lot of information, but this was what the abstract looks like. Just like a short description of what our project is, how we're gonna, like why we're doing it, why it's significant, and how we're gonna achieve it, and what we expect to see, because obviously we can't actually do this research because we don't have access to a lab or any of the materials, but we can, based off of previous research, we can figure out what we think will happen. Now, Ignite was an amazing opportunity for me to practice research skills that I never had before. And then everything I just told you about the optogenetic protein and all the different diseases that it could solve, that's all stuff I learned over the past few months working on this project. So you can see like just how much you can improve your skills and improve your knowledge and kind of expand your horizons just by taking on opportunities that are a little bit outside of your comfort zone. Because I was a little bit worried going into this, but I'm really glad I did. And it's actually open to high school students. So I think most of you might be in grade 12, but if you're in grade 11, you can always sign up for Ignite next year and compete in it to practice right before you get into university. Okay, so second part of the presentation is all about uni. So I just wanted to cover some of these things I already talked about, but when it comes to picking a program, like I said, it's really important to look at your required courses. It's also really important to look at elective courses, and this depends on the type of person you are. Like if you really are interested in a bunch of different areas and you want to take a minor, then you're going to want to pick a program that gives you flexibility with your electives, that lets you take extra courses to get that minor. You don't want to pick a program that's super strict with the courses that you have to take, like engineering, for example. And then program size. So there's pros and cons to big programs versus small programs. Big programs, you get so much choice and there's so many different courses that you can take. But small programs, you really get to know the people in your year. And it's a really like tight-knit community feel. And I can speak on behalf of my program, the Healthsci program. Like I can text into our group chat on Facebook and ask anything, and literally anyone will respond to me and help me out immediately. Like if I'm wondering about a course that I want to take, people will text me like paragraphs about that course if they've taken it already. I remember like earlier this year, I needed to park near the school. And I was like, hey, does anyone have a student house they'd let me park at? Within like 5 minutes, I had like 3 or 4 people private message me saying like, here's my address, like go park at it. Everyone's so nice. So I love small programs, but some people might want the bigger choice and the more flexibility that a larger program gives you. So make sure you keep that in mind. And then the last thing was university atmosphere. So some schools are a bit more competitive than others. Some schools are very like, community feel. I would say Mac falls into the community feel kind of program or kind of school, but make sure you keep that in mind when it comes to deciding where you want to go for the next 4 years. And then what I wanted to talk about for most of this section is courses, because I remember really struggling to pick my electives when I was like the summer before my first year. So I just wanted to talk about it. So every single school is going to have this thing called an undergraduate calendar, and it'll list off pretty much like every single course that's available. And it also lists off the programs, which you can see on the left over here, and it'll tell you the required courses. So you can look at your program and see like what's required in second year, third year, etc. So you can plan ahead. But then you can also look at the course listings and see what electives there are. Or for example, if there's a course that you're really interested in, that's like a third year or second year course, you can look at it and see what prerequisites So like what courses you have to take before you can take that course. Like for example, I really want to take a forensic psychology class in third year. And for that class, you have to have taken 2 intro psych courses and 1 second year psych course. So I've taken the 2 intro psych courses. I'm currently in my second year psych course, so I can take that third year psych course. So you want to plan ahead a little bit as well. And this is what it looks like when you open up a course. So depends on the university, like different courses or different schools have different codes. But for the most part, the first number is going to tell you what level it is. So this is a first year course because it's got number 1 at the front. The letters are just, identification for that course, and 3 will tell you the number of units. So this is where it differs between schools because some schools use different unit systems, but at MAC, 3 units is 1 semester, 6 units is 2 semesters. The most important thing that you want to look at here is you want to look at what department is running that course, because that might give you an idea into what that course is going to be like. Like anthropology department, they're pretty essay heavy courses. So I know when I see an anthro course, I'm going to expect to do essays. And then you want to look at this box down here, which will tell you, or like this is going to be a different location depending on what school you're looking at, obviously. But this will tell you what kind of class time there is. So most courses that are 3 units are 3 hours a week. This class has got lectures and discussion. A discussion is a tutorial. So there's going to be like big lectures where the prof is talking, and then smaller group classes, tutorials where you have discussions with the people in the course with you. And then the other thing you want to do, especially with electives, because with the required courses, you don't have that much choice. So you don't really need to look at the course outline to decide if you're going to take it or not, because you have to. But with electives, you want to look at the course outline. So you Google the course code and then your university name, and you'll be able to find the course outline. Preferably look for one that is going to be taught by the same prof that's teaching you. So normally when you go to pick your courses, it'll tell you what professor is teaching it. So you can find a course outline by that professor, because each professor teaches things slightly different. Sometimes they change things up. And then the most important part, in my opinion, of the entire course outline is the evaluation, because that'll tell you what the course is going to be like. So this class has got 2 tests and then 2 assignments, and the assignments are essay-based. So if you're not an essay person, you want to avoid classes where the majority of your mark, 50%, comes from an essay. If you're not a test person, vice versa. So you want to look at how they're going to evaluate you and understand like how you're going to be marked in the class, so you have a good idea of what you're getting into. And then the other tip that I have, I feel like this is a really straightforward one, but you can just Google or like look up your course code and your university on Reddit and see what other people say about it, because they'll tell you their honest opinions about whether or not it was an easy course, if it was a hard course but really interesting, if it was really, really boring, like they'll tell you the truth. So go see what Reddit has to say about your courses. I use Reddit all the time when it comes to figuring out what electives to take. Okay, and then I wanted to end off this university section with 2 tips. My first tip is stay organized, and my second is apply your learning to the real world. So for staying organized, I have my to-do list on the screen. I'm obsessed with my to-do list, in case you cannot tell by the fact that I'm presenting them to you. But basically, I make a template, and I have like anything that I have to do every day. So I'm currently in the process of studying for the MCAT, which is scary, but I like do a practice cars question every single day. So I have that every single day on my template. I also have any classes that are scheduled on my research shifts for the research team, any meetings that I have that I know happen every single week. And then on the right side is one of my to-do lists. I forget what week this is from, but this is one of them like after I've actually gone through the week. So normally I'll just add like any assignments that I have to do. The reason I love to-do lists is because if I have a midterm or something coming up, I will schedule in when I'm going to study for that midterm. If I have a big assignment due, like this is my thread 3 assignment, it was due this Friday, I think. So I started working on it on the Monday. Oh yeah, that's Wednesday. Yeah, it was due this Friday. So I started working on it on Monday, and then I think I worked on it again Thursday and submitted it on Friday. So I love to plan ahead, and I like to plan little things every single day instead of, cramming everything at once, because it puts me like at a peace of mind, and it also keeps you accountable for your work, because it's really hard to keep track of all the little things that you have to get done, all the little assignments and lectures that you have to watch and notes you have to take. So it's really nice to have it all written out, and I just have to worry day by day. Like I just look at my to-do list for that day and worry about what's on there. I don't have to worry about what I have to do throughout the rest of the week, because I'll get there when I get there. So this is really great for my own peace of mind. I highly recommend making detailed to-do lists. I also schedule in like little things that you normally wouldn't schedule in. Like sometimes if I'm having like, for example, Tuesday was a super overwhelming day, I had a lot of different things to do. So I literally will like give myself a break. Like I scheduled in a shower to say like, okay, I'm gonna like do all of this and then I can shower to take a little break and then I'm gonna do all of this. So when my days are super overwhelming, sometimes I'll schedule little things like that, break up the day and make it less overwhelming. Oh no. Okay, and then the thing about applying your learning. So this is from one of my anatomy lectures. It's this condition, a congenital heart condition called patent ductus arteriosus. So basically in your heart, you've got your pulmonary artery and you've got your aorta. And in the fetus, so when you're in the womb, there's an opening between the aorta and the pulmonary artery that's called the ductus arteriosus. And that's really important for fetal development. But when you're born, there's a shift in the pressure that occurs in your system that closes this, usually. Now, some people have this patent ductus arteriosus, so it stays open even after they're born, and that can cause some heart problems and some lung issues. Now, the reason I'm telling you this is because I saw this in one of my lectures, and then like a few days later, I was reading an article for the research team that I'm working on, and I saw patent ductus arteriosus on it. And I actually knew what it was because I'd taken a course that had said it. And now like I'm never gonna forget what PDA is because I'm always gonna remember that like I saw it in lecture and then a few days later I saw it in a paper about preterm birth. So now I'm always gonna remember like it's a condition that happens in preterm babies or in neonatal infants right after they're born. So that's what I mean about finding ways to apply your learning because it helps it stick and it also makes it feel more real to you. Like you can listen to it in a lecture all you want, but when you see it in real life or in a situation where it actually matters, it like becomes more real to you and it helps with your learning and helps with your attention because now I'm not going to forget what this is. Okay, third part of this presentation is different types of research. So there's two main types. Now you guys might already know this, but I didn't know this going into first year, so that's why I'm talking about it. So there's lab research, which is like what you typically see, like someone working in a lab, and then clinical research, which is where you ask questions more about in real life situations. So in a lab, you can control all the environmental factors, right? But in clinical research, it's about real people with real diseases or real conditions taking treatments in like a real life scenario. So you're not controlling them by a lab. So lab research, there's different levels of analysis and there's two different types. So there's wet labs that actually, work with biological matter. And there's dry labs that work on computer simulations and computer models. So these are the different levels of analysis. Some of you might already know this. I know this is straight out of IB textbooks because I remember talking about this when I was in IB. We got in vitro in cells, in vivo in organs, or ex vivo, sorry. In vivos in actual animals and sometimes in humans. And then in silico, which is on a computer. So labs can work at these different levels to answer super specific questions about diseases, treatments, drugs, bacteria, a multitude of different things. And then clinical research, like I said, is more like in real life. And clinical research is important for evidence-based practice. So anyone who works in healthcare will base their decisions for people's care, for people's health, off of the evidence that already exists. And a really important part of evidence-based practice are systematic reviews. So these are articles or studies that basically do a literature search and they find all the relevant studies for their specific research question, and then they analyze and summarize all of the results to come to a conclusion. Now I have this up here, the Cochrane Library, because this is a really well-known library that does systematic reviews. And if you're interested in kind of like learning more about journal articles, because I don't think I've read a single journal article when I was in high school. It wasn't until university. But if you want to get started early or like you're just interested in this kind of stuff, take a look at the Cochrane Library, look them up. They have their systematic reviews. I'm not sure if you can access them for free. You might be able to access them through your high school, so you guys can figure that out. But you can read their systematic review or read the results. And Cochrane is great because they also do like a summary, but in like less technical terms. So they'll take their systematic review and then summarize what the results of this review tell you and what it means for clinical practice in an easy to read like summary. So if you're interested in kind of learning more about clinical research or just understanding a bit more, or maybe there's a disease or a treatment that you really want to look up and you're just interested in learning about, the Cochrane's a great place to start, and that's why I have it up there. Okay, part number 4, getting involved. So other than kind of doing your own research, like looking at Cochrane reviews by yourself, I just wanted to start off this getting involved section by talking about expectations. So I think, setting your expectations straight before you start is really important. One is that it's really hard to get a research position, especially the younger that you are. Like first years and second years don't usually get research positions. It's usually in your third and fourth year that you start to get positions. And it's really hard to find a prof or find a doctor that has space to take on an undergrad. Because usually like they want master's students or they want fourth year undergrads. It's really hard to find someone who's willing to take on like a first year, second year. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't start looking and you shouldn't try, because you can find. Like the research team that I work on takes first years all the time. So I'm not saying it doesn't happen, it's just a little harder to make it happen when you're younger. And the other thing is that you want to make sure that publishing is not your main priority. It's more about your experience, and there's so many little skills that you have to work on before you can publish a paper. So it's about getting those skills and learning all of them, especially as an undergrad student. And then maybe like thinking about publishing later on, maybe at the end of your undergrad, or if you take a master's or things like that, or like while you're in postgraduate studies. But yeah, so publishing is not the main priority. I just wanted to set those expectations. So the first way to get involved, this is like the super typical way that most people do it. So you go to your faculty's website and there's going to be a research section. So here's the Healthsci website. You can see research up here. There's also research down there. And you click on it, you go look at all the different research projects that are going on and all the different researchers that work for your faculty. And then you go and read some articles. If there's one that catches your eye that you're super interested in, you'll find the person who was the head of that study. So the first author is usually the person in charge of the study. Or you find a name on the faculty website that's working on a project that you're really excited about, and then you cold email them. So cold email is basically you just email them and saying like, hey, I'm blah, blah, blah. I'm in my first year, second year, and of this program, I read your paper on this and I found it super interesting and I really like to learn more about it. I was wondering if you had any open positions for an undergraduate student on your team, or even like as a volunteer position, because mostly like I currently work as a volunteer. So usually when you start, you work as a volunteer. And then in your email, you want to include a cover letter. So this cover letter is going to talk about why you want this position, why you want to work with them, and what skills you have that would make you a good research assistant. So for my cover letters, I would talk about my IB projects, like my IA and my extended essay, because those were like small scale research projects that I worked on my own, and they show that you have at least some exposure to some sort of research. And then you want to include your resume as well. So any, jobs that you've had, any extracurriculars, and you want to include a transcript. So that's going to be your grades. If you're in your first year, you don't have a transcript yet, you can even include your high school transcript. I've done that before. Now, most of the time when you cold email, it's really hard to get a response because these people are very, very busy. So maybe after 2 weeks, if you still don't hear back, you can send a follow-up email. If you don't hear back after the second one, I would just leave it, because you don't want to bother them. They're obviously not available, or they don't have an open position, or they would have told you. Oh, and then the other tip I wanted to tell you, something that the doctor that I work on told me, because when I asked her if she had any tips for, people looking for research, she said like the number one thing is you want to make sure they ask for your references and they actually call them. Because if they don't ask for references, then that means they don't really care about what kind of person you are or what kind of student you are. And they're just taking you on to do some work that they don't want to do. But if they ask for your references and they call them and they actually ask about you, then you know that they're someone who wants to teach you and is like invested in your learning and in your development as a researcher. So that's one big thing. And she also said that from her end of things, she always gives the students that are applying the opportunity to talk to other students on her team to figure out what that team is like before you join. So those are just some general tips. The other really great way to get involved is research programs. So I have this one on the screen. That's the Sick Kids Summer Research Program. It's super competitive. It's for undergraduate students. They list pretty much like 40 or 50 different researchers at Sick Kids that are taking on undergrad students for the summer. It's a paid position for 4 months, so May, June, July, and August. And it's a great opportunity. Sick Kids is a really, really well-known institution, so working with them would be an amazing opportunity and you would learn so much from it. But it is competitive, so I pretty much as soon as applications open, I would recommend applying. I think you can apply in your first year. because I remember I applied in my first year. The program got canceled because of COVID, but I did apply in my first year, and you can send them, they'll tell you like all the things that you have to send, all the forms that you have to fill out in order to apply. But I just want to put that up there because I feel like not a lot of people know about it. I found out about it like, I think like the very beginning of January, and the program applications closed January 31st. So I rushed to get everything done. I wish I heard about it sooner. So that's why I'm telling you guys about it. The other thing is most programs will have research postings. So with BHSc, they have a discussion board on our like Avenue, which is our school's kind of like hub where all the courses are posted. And they'll list like if researchers are looking for students, they'll post on the discussion board. And that's a great opportunity because you actually know they're looking for someone. Because like I said, with cold emailing, you don't actually know if they have a spot available, but with like if you see a posting, then you know it's available. So whatever programs you guys end up in the future, always take a look to see if there's a website like that, or maybe on your main faculty website, there's research postings for like doctors to post when they're looking for an undergrad, because that way you can apply and you know that you have a chance because they're actually looking. And the last thing is pretty much a summary of some stuff I've already said. So case competitions like Ignite are great because you can start before university because Ignite's open to high school students. And not only is it good practice, but it's also something you can put on your resume or your CV that makes you look more appealing to researchers. And then the other thing is to practice on your own. So journal articles are super hard to read. They're super long. There's a lot of big words in them. And it's really hard to understand what you're looking for, like what the important information is. So I would say practice looking at journal articles for a topic that you're interested in and practice reading them and understanding them, because that's a skill that takes some time. And practicing on your own is just as good as practicing on an actual team if you don't have the opportunity to practice on a team. So I definitely say like in your first year, if you're not working on an actual research team, then take opportunities like the case competitions or make your own opportunities so you can practice your skills. And I think, yeah, that's the end of my presentation. I know I talked for so long, but I'm very excited to answer any questions that you guys might have for me. Oh, sorry. One other thing. I put my contact info on here, so my Instagram and my email. If you guys think of any other questions that you want to ask me in the future, or if you just want to contact me for anything, feel free to.
Okay, thank you so much for your presentation, Ola. I'm sure all of our participants enjoyed it because I really enjoyed it. I was very interested in the PDA and everything that you were mentioning. So we're going to start off with all the questions from the chat that we got, and we got quite a lot. So thank you guys so much for asking. The first question is, apart from preparing you for the workload, did IB help in your admissions process to university?
That's a great question. And it's really hard to answer that. I didn't apply with my IB marks, but I will say that most of the people that I know from my high school that got into Housekeeping were IB students. So I think there's something about maybe the way that like IB assignments work. Maybe it's the like paper 1s and paper 2s in English. I don't know what it is, but there's something about it that I think makes you a better writer or makes you better at expressing your opinions that helps in the sub app. But as for like applying with IB grades, I didn't bother.
Thank you. Well, I hope that's true because I did my supplementary application. I don't know if that works. So
We'll see.
Our second question from the chat is, overall, how would you say the program is, like health sciences? Would you say it's hard, easy? Like how much support are you getting? That kind of thing.
Okay, being completely honest, our program's hella easy. Like it's compared to like Healthsci. I know like some people I've heard that people have heard that it's hard, but I don't really know where they hear this from because everyone that talks to me that isn't in Healthsci makes fun of me for being in Healthsci because my courses are easy. So like all my friends, like especially engineers, they love to make fun of us. So it's pretty, okay, here's the thing. It's easy because they really focus on your learning. So they want you to improve your skills, and it's really hard to grade someone's improvement in a skill like communication, you know? Like it's easy to test someone and their memorization, but realistically, like you're going to memorize something, you're going to forget it like a month later after the test, right? It's like your communication skills, your presentation skills, your research skills. So these are things that actually stick with you, and that's what Healthsci likes to cultivate and work on. So that's why it's a little different. Like they mark you a little differently. I would say the workload first year is pretty easy. Second year gets a lot harder. Everyone always says second year is the worst, and then it gets better after that. But it's not like something to be worried about. You'll totally be able to handle it. And I don't think, yeah, I wouldn't consider that it a hard program.
Yeah. So although may not be a hard program, somebody in the chat was wondering, do you think it's a hard program to get into?
Oh yeah, that's a difference. Like Healthsci is hard to get into, and then once you get in, it's really enjoyable. And I feel like I've learned so much, and it's only been like a year and a half or a little bit over a year and a half that I've been in this program. But it is super competitive because, like I think there's like 260 or 280 spots this year. And then they told us that they had almost 7,000 applicants. So it's really hard to narrow down 7,000 people to like 280. But that's just the nature of the program.
For sure. The next question we had, what are some apps that you use that help you study, or maybe some apps that you could recommend?
Oh, that's a good question. So I invested in an iPad, which I feel like every university student now invests in an iPad, but like I got an Apple Pencil and an iPad instead of getting notebooks. And I love it because you can like search your notes for a specific word. Also, like you're not limited to the number of pages because you just can keep adding more. So I would, if you have an iPad or if you have the means to get one for university, I would recommend, especially with like in-person lectures, because you can download the lecture slides and then just annotate over them, which I did in first year, and that was super, super helpful. So like getting an app like GoodNote or what's the other one? Notability. The other apps, everyone uses OneNote. So most universities give you a Microsoft package like Word, Excel, and it comes with OneNote. And you can make like little notebooks and type up notes from lectures. Pretty much every university student uses OneNote. And then Quizlet is super helpful. I use Quizlet right now to study for the MCAT. And then the other one that a lot of people use, a lot of med school students use this app. It's called Anki. It's like a flashcard making app. I'm not the biggest fan of it because I find it way too complicated, but some people love it. Like there are people that swear by Anki and they study for all their like really heavy courses with it. So that's something to look into.
Yeah, for sure. Those were all really great suggestions. I'll make sure to look into it. And I think someone like me was very impressed by your to-do list, and they were wondering, what is the app or website that you recommend for creating to-do lists like that?
Thank you. I love my to-do list. They're like my biggest like pride and joy. But I just use the Notes app on my phone because you can make like a little checklist and it's just super easy to access. I know like there's some note or to-do list making apps. I've never tried them though, so I don't have one to recommend.
Yeah, for sure. No worries. Another question we had was, do you know of any hospitals that take volunteers in high school, and did you volunteer in one?
I did. I started volunteering in a hospital this summer, like literally the end of grade 9. So I've been volunteering in Hamilton Health Sciences for a while. And I think most hospitals will take students in high school. I'm pretty sure because I know Hamilton Health Sciences does, and St. Joe's, which is another hospital organization in Hamilton, does. And I worked there like all grade 10, all grade 11, all grade 12. And then in first year, I transferred from one of the other hospitals to McMaster because I was going to be studying there. And I worked at McMaster until COVID happened and everything shut down. So I would say take a look at the hospital group, because usually it's not like just one hospital, it's like a group of hospitals in your city, and see if there's a volunteer application form. There probably will be.
Yep. And other than volunteering, did you have you been working a part-time job in university? And do you think it was manageable? And if not, do you know friends who did? And like, what was their experience, if you know?
Okay, I love this question too. Okay, yes, I did work. I got like my first job the summer after high school, and I worked all of my first year. But I had a super light work schedule because I knew I was a university student. So I worked like 8 hours every Sunday and maybe like sometimes Friday evenings. So it depends on your work and if they'll let you do that. But most places will. And even if they don't, if they require more time, I would say it's very doable in most programs. The one program where it might be questionable in is engineering, because eng programs, like their schedules are insane. They're just like back-to-back courses and labs. I mean, they actually can get jobs after they graduate, but because, engineering is like kind of straight to the workforce kind of program, whereas other programs, usually you take something after. But yeah, like for most programs, I would say doing a job was manageable. For me this year, I worked for my first semester. So I worked part-time at a retail store, and I also worked on the research team 10 hours a week. And also like second year is kind of a heavy workload. So it was a grind. I'm not going to lie. My to-do list saved me because I planned everything ahead of time. But I quit my job because I wanted to start studying for the MCAT and realistically couldn't do all of that at once.
Yeah, for sure. I've heard how hard the MCAT is. So I think everyone understands about that. Our next question, and it's kind of related to high school again, it's what do you recommend to do in high school to help you prepare and increase your chances of getting accepted? Like, I think they mean to your program and I guess in general, because they also ask about extracurriculars, volunteer experience, really whatever you did in high school that you think benefited you.
Yeah, okay. So with most schools, at least like in my experience when I was applying, there's not really a place to kind of talk about your extracurriculars. One thing I always tell people is the Healthsci app is not a place to flex your extracurriculars. So it's not like explicit in any of the applications. That being said, I mean, I was very involved in high school in a bunch of different clubs and like student council and like different things like that because I love doing that sort of stuff. And I think there's like skills that you build just by getting involved in places outside of your courses and your classes that help you. But for most programs, it doesn't actually make like whether or not you did extracurriculars isn't a big deal. It's just about like your experiences and your skills as a person, and extracurriculars are a way to build those skills.
That makes sense. And I'm sure there's a lot of people that have been like struggling to get involved and like find experiences during the time of COVID. So somebody was wondering, how do you suggest making the most out of like the COVID situation while writing the application and like how to help that your application using that?
That's a good question. I don't know. I don't know. I mean, obviously, COVID's like a really unique experience, but I don't know if talking about COVID in an application, like I'm not sure where you would do it. I guess it depends on the question. Like if we're talking about Healthsci next year, if they give a sub-app question that maybe asks about COVID, then you could talk about your experience and how you handled it. But when it comes to making the most out of it, I think a lot of really great opportunities exist virtually. Like the Ignite case competition was completely virtual. So finding opportunities like that where you can still get involved while being behind a computer screen, I think is really important and could help you.
Definitely. So someone's asking, are you thinking of applying to medical school?
I am. That is why I'm studying for the MCAT. Yeah, I think med school has like always been what I wanted. I know some people like they change their mind when they started university, but I'm still pretty set on it. So we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, well, good luck.
Thanks, I need it.
So somebody was wondering, what do you think is the best way to stand out in terms of applications when applying to your program? So like in the sub app, like a lot of people wonder how, because a lot of people say like their main tip is stand out. So how would you say someone should do that?
Yeah, I know. I hated when people told me that when I was applying because I was like, how am I supposed to stand out? Like it's 3 questions and I have like 1,500 characters. Honestly, like I wasn't too worried about standing out. I was just more worried when I worked on mine. I was more worried about just being as honest as possible and like answering as genuine as possible because you'll find like a lot of the questions are very reflection based and kind of ask you for your opinion. And that's like we do a lot of reflections in the program, so that's why those are questions like there are questions like that. And they just want to hear from you in a really honest way. Like they don't want you to tell them what you think they want to hear. They just want you to say like your honest opinion. So that's why when it comes to working on the sub app, like I would say working on it early and like, like really like thinking about your answer and trying to come up with one that's as genuine and as honest as possible is the most important. Standing out, I really like, I don't know how does a person stand out? I don't know. Like you just have to answer honestly and really like edit your work and make it the best as possible and then like put your best foot forward and then whatever happens, happens.
Yeah.
Because you have to remember, oh, sorry.
No, it's okay.
I was just gonna say, you have to remember that like it's such a big applicant pool and so little spots. And, it's not a perfect system. So I'm sure there's gonna be some people who would be great Healthsci students who don't get the opportunity just because of their SUP or things like that. So yeah, just don't take it too personally and just try your best and see what happens because it's out of your control.
For sure. I think all the people I've ever talked to, they all say the same thing. It's just be yourself, try to be honest, do your best, right? It is. This is also related to the supplementary application, and they're asking, in the supplementary application, do you think that grade 12 marks, or like your grades in general, are weighted equal to or more than the application?
So basically it's the cutoff. Like if you have above 90, then you're good, and then it's up to yourself. So what I've heard, and I'm pretty sure this is true, me and my friends were literally just talking about this morning, is they take your SUP, so there's 3 questions, right? And they give it to a few different people. I don't know the exact number, and everyone marks it out of 7. So then you get your average score, and then they pretty much rank everyone from like the highest SUP to the lowest SUP, and they like, accept the top until they get to a point where like people are tied. And then at that point, they remark the ones that are like in the group that's tied by different people and then try to separate them like that. So once you reach the 90, your grade doesn't matter. And I remember May at Mac when I like just gotten accepted and I went to the Mac open house, Stacy, who is our assistant dean, was telling us that the highest average they accepted was like a 98.7. She's like, there were people with like 99, 100 averages that we rejected. So at the end of the day, like it's your SUP that matters more.
Thank you for that. So now we're going to be moving on to the questions that the participants sent through the Google Forms prior to the seminar. And while we do those, keep dropping questions, you guys, in the chat. We love them and we'll get to them soon. So the first question is, what courses do you recommend high school students who are interested in your health science program take?
I would recommend, so outside of I forget what the required courses are now, but outside of the required courses, I would recommend taking kinesiology, the like course where you talk a lot about anatomy, because we take a 2nd-year anatomy course and it's kind of considered like the hardest course in our program because it's anatomy. There's like so much content to learn. So if you've taken a course like kin before where you've like learned the different muscles and the bones, that'll help. Other than that, though, I don't think I have any that like come to mind that really helped. So I think that might be the only one.
Sounds good. So this is more about your life and the programs. So you did mention this briefly in your presentation, but what would you say your workload is on a day-to-day basis?
I would say it's pretty good. Like I think 2nd year is definitely more work than it was 1st year. But I think like in terms of like how many hours of class I have, it's not that bad. Especially compared to some other programs like engineering and Lifesci where they have like lots of lectures every day. I would say like I probably have 2 lectures a day that I have to take notes on. And then like in 2nd year, you do a lot of project courses where you do presentations. So a lot of my time is spent in group meetings. So there's usually at least 1 or 2 group meetings a day. That's pretty much it.
And so you were online, you mentioned, for your entire 1st year. So how was that? And do you have any tips with how to cope and like make friends and things in the online community?
That's a good question. I would say the best way to okay, this is like hard because you can't control it, but the way that I've made friends this year is through my group projects. So we have a lot in my program. Healthsci is known for group work. And you're like meeting with these people once a week, and it's like I have a cell bio course where there's 7 of us, and you just make like 7 new friends, basically, because you see them like 3 hours a week, and you're talking to them and working with them all the time. So you get to become really good friends, and it's a really like fun experience. So taking advantage of group projects is one way. Joining clubs and attending club meetings is another great way, because it's like this, like Zoom, where everyone's cameras are on and you're getting to know new people. I've definitely met a few people through club events that I wouldn't have met if I, didn't attend or didn't go out of my way to go to them. I know it's kind of hard when everything's virtual to like want to attend another meeting, but it's worth it if you want to stretch out. Also, if you're going into first year, I'd recommend, even if Welcome Week's online next year, or a week like orientation week, whatever they call it at your school, definitely attend, get involved. I was a Welcome Week rep and I love doing it, and I love meeting the first years and getting to know them. And it's a great way to, meet upper years that you can ask questions to, because a lot of the first years that I met still message me like throughout the year asking about like test advice and study advice and things like that, because it's hard to find people to ask questions to when everything's online. So I'd recommend going to your orientation weeks.
For sure. And I think that is a great segue into our next question, because it's, how do you find a balance between studying and work for your mental health?
Okay. That's a great question. I don't know if I know how to answer it. I think like my to-do list definitely help, because I'll schedule in, like if I have like a club event or like a social event, I'll literally schedule it in. So I go to it. Like if me and my friends are gonna like have an Among Us game night, I'll schedule it into my to-do list. So I know that I do it, like just so you don't brush it off. Because it's really, really hard to divide between work and, not work. When everything's in the exact same room. Like this is my bedroom, and I also spend like all day sitting at this desk. So I would say like just schedule downtime, schedule time to go out on walks and things like that. Just like get away from a screen. That would be my biggest like advice. Like actually schedule it and prioritize it.
That makes sense. And I know we were kind of branching away from the studying, but back to study. Do you have any specific study tips that you have that you kind of like usually do?
Okay, it really like I've noticed that, especially among my friends, all of us have very, very different approaches to studying, and we do what works for them for us. Like for me, I love writing notes. So like actually writing out notes is really important for my learning. And normally, like for example, anatomy is a very study heavy class. So I'll like write my anatomy notes on my iPad, and then leading up to the midterm, like a little bit every day I'll review. So like spreading out your review instead of doing it for over like a few days for many hours, doing like an hour a day for a week is much more effective, and you'll remember a lot more, and you're not going to hate yourself because you're not going to be studying for like 6 hours in one day. And then like for me, like I write review sheets because like I said, I like writing things out. But then one of my really close friends, he hates writing and like thinks it's the biggest waste of time, and would like he always makes fun of my review sheets because he just like sees no need for it. So it just depends. You have to figure out what works for you. And I think that's kind of, it happens naturally over your first year, you'll figure it out. But spreading out your studying is like one universal tip.
For sure. And this goes back to programs. So what would you say is the main difference between Life-Sci and Health-Sci, and what made you decide to go with Health-Sci?
Okay, so Healthsci is very like healthcare focused. So not necessarily medicine focused, but they give you a lot of opportunities to practice skills that would be important in like health research, any sort of healthcare setting, in education, like health settings, things like that. So that's why I chose it, because I knew I wanted to go into medicine. A lot of people though do things in education. They do like other sort of healthcare jobs. They do a lot of research. A lot of researchers are Housekeeping alums. Education is another big thing, because the whole inquiry-based learning really promotes that kind of, knowledge for when it, like going into education, becoming teachers and things like that. Then Life-Sci is Life-Sci, so it's very science. Like you take chem, physics, biochem, like organic chem, all the super like straightforward science courses. So it's great if you have a specific interest in like physics or math or like one of the streams, because Life-Sci is general first year and then you specialize after in second year. Or you can continue general Life-Sci, but most people specialize. So if you have a specific interest in one of those, then I would say Life-Sci is probably the better choice. If you are like, interested in healthcare or education or even law, I know a lot of students go to law school, then Healthsci would be a good choice. And you can always take those physics, and like I took physics in the summer, like you have elective space to take extra courses.
Great, thank you so much for that. And now for our last question, I know you mentioned that you did a lot of extracurriculars, and we talked a bunch about it, but someone was wondering how many extracurriculars would you recommend taking? Like maybe like just a range?
Okay, that's I don't like know a specific range, but I would say like I did a lot, and I wouldn't recommend because I was kind of burnt out by the end of grade 12. I was kind of tired of clubs. Like I think I was like president of 2 clubs, like vice president of a club, like part of student council. I volunteered after school. Like I was like doing like too many like little events as well on top of that. So like pretty much every lunch I had a meeting. And I wouldn't recommend that because one, like at the end of the day, your extracurriculars aren't like a big part of your application for university. And two, like you're gonna get tired and you're gonna want breaks. So just enough where you can like just if there's something that's really interesting to you, then go for it. Like I really love DECA, which is so funny because I didn't go into business, but I loved doing it and I had so much fun. So I love being a DECA exec. And like that's something that I don't regret doing. Or student council was something I really enjoyed. So choose like 1, 2, or 3 things that you genuinely really like doing and you'll be good. Don't worry about like filling it up too much.
Okay, thank you so much for that. And it looks like that's all of our questions for today, unless anybody wants to drop a quick question into the chat. So Ola, thank you so much for this presentation and answering the plentiful amount of questions that we had today. So for the participants, please make sure to fill out the form that will be posted to our Linktree tonight, and that will let you receive your volunteer hours if you get over 50%. And we will email you a certificate this Tuesday if you do pass with your volunteer hours.
Okay. Thank you guys. I really enjoyed doing this and I enjoyed answering all your questions. Have a great rest of your weekend.
Thank you so much.